Listen, right now we are in complete clueless land when it comes to what is going to be happening with Manchester United going forward. And United are a different beast, man. No one knows what the true potential of this team can be. Nobody knows what we're capable of putting out week in, week out, especially without the injuries. And in the very real possibility Erik ten Hag gets sacked, you've got to identify the strengths and weaknesses that come with each potential candidate for the role. I've looked at Thomas Tuchel, I've looked at De Zerbi. I'm going to look at Thomas Frank because I think there's some positive traits with him. And I think there's some worries with him. Now, I think there's quite a lot to like about him. He brings quite positive values and an approach that I think aims to the very stratosphere of what teams can achieve. His teams outperform their relative abilities, I think it's fair to say. Now, the opportunity to come and manage a club like United might only come once for him, and you would imagine that you would snap your hand off for a chance at doing that job. Now, we've all seen it before. Is it worth taking a risk on a manager that's got the sort of stature that Frank has got? The jump from Brentford to United is going to be immeasurable. Will Thomas Frank be able to cope with such a switch from what he knows? Now, yes, he's got quite extensive Premier League experience, but I don't think Premier League experience alone is going to mark you out as the potential man to lead Manchester United. I imagine the number of people at your press conference alone is unfathomable. And he's had almost 6 years as the head coach of Brentford since October 2018. That's a long time to be at one club in the modern age. And a period of time which has seen the football landscape change so constantly. There's a real chance that Frank might even struggle to adapt to a potential move to United. It's possible. I think it's not necessarily the most likely thing to happen, but it's possible. It goes without saying, if you spent over 5 years carving a club out in your own image, starting again at a completely different environment with completely different expectations and completely different pressures, he's going to warrant a massive adjustment period. Can he hit the ground running with Manchester United? Is he capable of building a club of this stature? You've got to remember the pressures of Manchester United. When I'm on the pod with Rion, we have people that come in that have played for Manchester United specifically, but even some other clubs. They say when you come to Manchester United, it's different. Yeah, you've been in the Premier League before, but you have no idea what it's like at Manchester United. Now imagine that as a manager and the pressure that comes with being a Manchester United manager. That doesn't even mention the leap in the expectation that United would have compared to Brentford and what the fans would have. And some fans would be annoyed at your appointment off the beginning because you're not a sexy name that hasn't won a European Cup. So that on the back, you've already got people offside. United want to be winning titles, whether or not that's realistic with the current squad. That is what is expected at Manchester United, and Brentford have overachieved for Brentford. But if you come where you come with Brentford, with Manchester United, people are not going to be happy. I can't imagine Brentford even thinking European football, Champions League football is in their sights. Now, lack of trophies. Brentford have never won a major trophy, and that didn't change under Thomas Frank. And you can attribute that to the expectations and the quality of the squad. I think if he was to just keep Brentford in the Premier League, they'd probably be happier than they would a League Cup win and getting relegated. United need a manager that's capable of winning everything. And they have to have winning in their blood. Frank doesn't quite have that. In the Championship, Brentford's last 2 seasons, in the Championship, saw them get third place finishes. He didn't even win the league in something that was winnable for him to do. Is it a worry that he's never really established a team that's capable of that ruthless winning streak, even in the Championship? They did win the playoffs, but I don't think it's the same. And the stats are poor. Frank's overall win percentage is okay. He has a decent win percentage of 40.7% overall. And you compare that to Brentford this season, you start to wince. This season, they finished with a win percentage of 23.81. They scored 1.43 goals on average and conceded 1.69 goals per game on average. That isn't great reading when it comes to a United side that want to improve and compete on all fronts. And the project has declined. Now, you'd be stupid to discredit the work that Frank has done at Brentford. This is not a club where you'd expect they can have constant evolution and constant improvement, or that they're going to end up, progressing from that sort of safe, established Premier League side to, European competition to Champions League competition to force for the league. It doesn't work like that. You've got too many big players that are trying to do the impossible while you're just trying to probably stay in the league with the budget that you get given. But I think there's credit due for their stay in the Premier League so far. And even though the project has declined, it was quite noticeable, I think, this season. And you have to wonder why that was. It started quite well this season, but it fell off hard. In their first 2 seasons in the Premier League, Brentford registered an initial 13th place in the 21-22 season, and then a quite impressive 9th place finish in the 22-23 season. This season it was 16th on only 39 points. Relegation form, really. When it mattered, the club had to take a big step forward from that successful 9th place the season prior, and they crumbled. Whether that was the expectation put on the players, whether that was the expectation put on the manager, whether that was some obvious conditions that could have contributed to it, like injuries, Ivan Toney's gambling ban, but dropping down 7 places is not good. If overlying context with injuries wasn't an excuse for Ten Hag, I don't think we can attribute that same excuse to Thomas Frank in a similar manner. Tough circumstances, but wasn't enough to keep Ten Hag in a job. Would it be fair to suggest that Brentford's success was a flash in the pan? I think these are things that you have to genuinely consider. Personally, I think Frank is a good coach. I think he's a bit of a bell. Now, if he was a bell that was in charge of Manchester United, you probably like that a little. I think Klopp's a bell. I think Pep's a bell. But when they're your bell, you kind of like them being a bit of a bell. Now, with the rumours being that Ineos want more of a head coach rather than an overarching manager in the Fergie, Matt Busby sort of role, Thomas Frank really does tick that box. But you wonder how far down any shortlist that Frank would be. Tuchel's clearly higher up on that list than him. I think De Zerbi may be higher up on that list than him. Was McKenna higher up on that list than him? And have we been rejected by all of those? At what point do they start to look at some of the candidates as below Erik Ten Hag? Because even though it's been hard for Erik Ten Hag, 3 finals and 2 trophies in 2 years, despite the circumstances that he's found himself in, might start to look like a real good return if the next manager can't even manage that. Let me know your thoughts on Thomas Frank in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one. Laters. Hey, thank you for watching the video. If you are new around these parts, then don't forget to subscribe. My channel is proudly supported by my community on Patreon. If you'd like to get a little bit of extra content, a Discord group, meetups, 5-a-side games, weekly podcasts, behind the scenes, and even an occasional bit of transfer news as and when I get it, then for the price of a pint, you can show your appreciation for the content that we make and get some goodies for doing so as well. Check the link in the description or click the button right here. You'll also find all of my socials here too if you want to follow me on any of those platforms. Nice one.